The peaceful ruins of southern Turkey, bedtime story and ocean, sounds for deep sleep, part 2. There are moments in life when we must step away from all the noise, not to escape the world, but to hear the quiet voice of our own soul once more. In the southern lands of Turkey, where ancient ruins rest silently by the sea, time itself seems to hold its breath. There, amid the whispering waves and the scent of salt, Elara begins her journey through stillness, to rediscover what we all have lost, the peace within. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Tonight, the peaceful ruins of southern Turkey, bedtime story and ocean, sounds for deep sleep, part 2, invites you into that very journey. Between the sound of the waves and the breath of the night, you will not simply fall asleep. You will drift into the depths of your unconscious, where fragments of memory, love, and fear await to be heard. For sometimes, to truly awaken, one must first learn how to fall asleep, deeply, gently, with the soul itself. Part 1. The invitation to sleep. That night, the sky was draped in a deep velvet stillness. Over the Aegean Sea, the silver moonlight shimmered upon gentle ripples, glimmers of a world slowly drifting into slumber. In that tranquil expanse, the voice of Ethan Gray rose softly like a passing breeze. Welcome to this night. Let every burden of the day dissolve with each breath. This is not merely a time to sleep. It is a ritual of returning to yourself. Amid the soothing rhythm of the waves, an image appeared. Elara, a woman carrying a weariness too vast to name. She had wandered too far through the noise of the city, through the roles others demanded her to play. Strong, successful, ever smiling. But tonight she no longer wished to perform. She only wished to be, to breathe. Elara sat by the edge of the boat, closing her eyes as a sea breeze wove through her hair. Ethan continued speaking, as though conversing not only with her soul but with yours. Relax your shoulders, take a deep breath, and let it go. You don't need to try to sleep. Sleep will come, as the ocean comes to embrace the shore. The sound of waves intertwined with his voice, spreading gently through the air. In the salty breeze, Elara felt her heart begin to soften. No more tangled thoughts, no lists of tasks, no clamor of the world, only her own breathing and the heartbeat of the sea. For the first time in a long while, Elara felt light. She was no longer the woman who had to struggle to survive. She was part of the night, of the water, of the air. She understood that peace is not when the world stops moving, but when the soul stops resisting. Amid the tender murmur of waves, Ethan's voice lowered, like a lullaby. Tonight, you're not merely falling asleep. You are returning to yourself, to that sacred place where the waves are the whispers of the soul, and the darkness is no longer frightening, because within it, you find the light of peace. Elara smiled faintly, her eyes gently closing. Outside, the ocean kept its endless rhythm. Inside, her spirit began to melt into calm, and so the journey into sleep, the journey home, had truly begun. Part 2. Leaving the city, stepping out of the roles. On her final night in Istanbul, the city had yet to sleep. Golden streetlights rippled across rain-soaked roads, cafes stayed open late, and the distant echo of the tram sounded like a soft farewell. Elara sat by the window of a midnight bus, her eyes reflecting the drifting glow of passing streets. Everything familiar slowly faded behind her, like the very life she was leaving behind. For years, Elara had lived as an actress in a play with no ending. She had mastered every role: the successful daughter, the capable colleague, the friend who always smiled at the right time. Yet, deep within, she knew she was exhausted, not just in body but in soul. Each morning, she put on another face, another voice, only to fit the expectations of others, until one day, she could no longer tell where she ended and the performance began. The bus rolled through the quiet outskirts. Outside, darkness blanketed the sky. Only the faint moon hung above, illuminating a narrow coastal road in the distance. Elara leaned her head against the glass, silently recalling a line by Carl Jung she once read. "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to become yourself, didn't that also mean letting go of everything that isn't you?" She had spent too long learning how to endure, how to wear the masks society applauded. Now she needed to learn the art of removing them, slowly, tenderly, like unbuttoning layers of armor from the heart. As the bus turned toward the shoreline, the eastern sky began to shift in color. The first light of dawn painted a soft pink across the distant sea. Elara opened the window and inhaled deeply. The scent of salt and freshly roasted coffee from roadside cafes rushed in, the fragrance of freedom, of a morning unburdened. The seaside town appeared after a gentle curve, rows of small white houses nestled together, thin smoke rising from morning stoves between olive groves, and sails swaying lightly in the harbor. The sound of waves mingled with distant laughter. No one hurried. No one wore a mask. Everything unfolded slowly, truthfully, as though time itself had learned to breathe here. Elara stepped off the bus, her shoes touching the damp stone pavement. The chill beneath her feet made her feel present, not on a screen, not in a meeting, but within the living reality of this moment. She followed a narrow path leading to the sea. The light spread gently across the landscape, bathing the white walls in a golden hue. An old man smiled at her as he brewed coffee in a small roadside shop. A child laughed from a porch, tossing seashells into the water. Elara smiled back, and in that simple gesture she rediscovered something she had long forgotten. Presence. Not existence to be seen, but presence to feel. She sat down on a wooden chair outside the cafe and ordered a cup of black coffee. Steam rose into the air, mingling with the early breeze carrying the taste of salt. Every breath, every heartbeat, every sound around her seemed to whisper the same thing. Welcome home. Elara closed her eyes gently, listening to the rhythm of the waves. Within her, something cracked open, not fear, but an old shell. And in that fragile space, something delicate and new began to take form. Peace. No one knew what had brought her here, nor where this journey would lead. But for Elara, this moment was no longer an escape. It was an act of the soul's survival, a quiet yet powerful calling that it was time to stop being what others expected and begin being herself. And as the sun slowly rose, lighting the vast ocean before her, Elara knew the journey of healing had begun, not elsewhere, but within the very first breath of that morning. Part 3. The harbor town and the rhythm of slowness. Morning unfolded over the harbor town in a light as soft as silk. The breeze carried the scent of salt and the cries of seagulls, gently brushing through the white curtains swaying by the windows. Elara walked slowly along the cobblestone street, where pastel-colored houses stood close together, facing the sunlit harbor. The rhythmic sound of an old man mending his nets echoed like an ancient refrain, mingling with the aroma of strong coffee drifting from a small corner cafe. A child ran past her, clutching a warm loaf of bread, laughing freely, the sound bright and clear like silver bells. Elara stopped and looked around. Everything here moved slowly, lightly, so much so that she could hear her own breathing. No one was in a hurry. No one pretended to be busy. The flower seller sat by the roadside, calmly rearranging sprigs of lavender. A young fisherman carried a basket of freshly caught fish. Sweat glistened on his face, yet he smiled with quiet joy. Everyone here seemed to live within their own rhythm, a rhythm the world Elara came from had long forgotten. She walked slowly along the harbor, listening to the waves brushing against the old wooden hulls. The sunlight shimmered on the surface of the water, breaking into thousands of flickering patterns that seemed to breathe. In that still moment, Elara felt something shifting within her. A forgotten part of herself was beginning to awaken. Then, from deep within her consciousness, the calm, resonant voice of Ethan Gray emerged, whispering, The human soul needs stillness and reflection. Without it, it becomes lost in the noise of the world. Elara nodded softly, as if replying to that inner reminder. For years, she had lived in a constant rush, running after time, after success, after expectations that were never her own. But here, by the sea, time stood still. No more numbers, no more alarms, no endless calls pulling her away from herself. She sat down on a stone step by the shore, slipped off her shoes, and let her bare feet touch the warm ground. The gentle waves lapped against her heels, cool, real, alive. The wind wove through her hair, carrying away the fatigue that had clung to her for so long. Elara lifted her gaze toward the sky, so blue it almost made her want to cry. For the first time in many months, she felt present. Not as a person resting, but as a living being, fully alive in each breath, each heartbeat, each second. Ethan's voice came again, softer now. Peace does not come from how far you travel, but from the moment you stop and listen. Elara understood, not with her mind, but with her whole being. In this quiet town, she realized that life was never somewhere else. It was breathing through the waves, smiling in the sunlight, pulsing inside her chest. A soft breeze passed by, carrying the scent of lavender, salt, and morning light. She closed her eyes, letting it all flow through her. There was no need to try to be happy, no need to search for peace, only the gentle permission to stop struggling just to exist. And in that sacred stillness of the morning, Elara knew she had just taken a small but profound step on her journey back to herself. Part 4. Meeting the captain and crossing the first threshold. That afternoon, the sunlight tilted over the sea, gilding each wave with threads of gold. Elara walked along the harbor, where the moored boats swayed gently in the salty breeze. Among dozens of vessels, one stood out. A wooden ship the color of amber, with a name carved along its side, Aegean Sea. She paused and touched the hull, feeling as though she were laying her hand upon something alive. Captain Nadir emerged from the cabin. He was a sun-browned man with silver hair, bare feet, and a calm, steady gait, like the very rhythm of the sea itself. In the glow of the setting sun, his face carried the quiet serenity of someone who had spent a lifetime with the wind and water. He looked at Elara and smiled. "Are you the new passenger?" His voice was deep and warm, like the sound of wood meeting water. Elara nodded, a little uncertain. "Then before you come aboard," Nadir said, bending to tie a nearby rope, "take off your shoes." Elara blinked in surprise. "Why?" "Because here," he replied, "we walk barefoot, to remember that we are alive." His words made her still. There was something in his tone, simple, yet echoing far beyond its literal meaning. It was not only about her feet, it was about her presence. She obeyed. As her bare feet touched the warm wood, a strange current ran up her spine, both tangible and sacred. The rough texture beneath her soles, the scent of tar and salt water mingled together, awakening a distant memory, as if she had stood here before, in another life. Captain Nadir looked at her with knowing eyes. "Every ship has its own soul," he said, "and anyone who steps aboard is about to change." Elara said nothing, but in that instant she understood. She wasn't merely boarding a vessel. She was stepping through an invisible doorway, one that opened into the world within herself. Then Ethan Gray's calm voice rose within her mind, carried on the wind, as if narrating her unspoken thoughts. Every journey outward is also a journey inward. When Elara finally stood on deck, the sea stretched endlessly before her. The wind carried the scent of salt and sunlight sweeping through her hair. The water shimmered like liquid glass beneath the fading light. The boat quivered gently, breathing, alive. She walked slowly across the deck, absorbing every detail. The creak of ropes brushing against the wood, the old maps resting inside the cabin, a brass compass dulled by time, handprints darkened by years of travel. Everything around her seemed to hum with quiet spirit. as though this place preserved the memory of every soul that had ever passed through. Elara placed her hand upon the railing and closed her eyes. She didn't know why her heart trembled so softly. Perhaps because for the first time in years, she felt something the city had taken from her. Connection. Not only with nature, but with the deepest part of herself. The part long buried beneath the noise. Nader's voice drifted back to her, light as the breath of the tide. We sail at dawn. Rest tonight. Don't think about where you've come from. This voyage has no map, because it does not seek a destination. It seeks who you truly are. Elara watched him disappear into the cabin, her chest filled with an unfamiliar mix of fear and anticipation. She knew she stood at the threshold of something immense, something reason could not name, yet her soul already recognized. The sunset faded. The sea turned deep blue, and the first stars began to appear. Elara remained there, barefoot upon the wooden deck, feeling the heartbeat of the ship merge with her own. And as the salted wind brushed past her face, she whispered to herself, "This is not just a journey," then smiled softly. "This is a beginning." Part 5. Exploring the ship. Learning the first lesson of letting go. The midday sunlight stretched across the sea like a golden ribbon. Elara walked slowly along the deck of the Aegean Sea, her bare feet feeling the warmth of the wood beneath the sun. Everything here was simple, yet filled with a mysterious vitality, as if the ship were not merely built from timber and sailcloth, but from the memories of the souls who had once journeyed upon it. On the oak table near the stern, traces of dried sea salt glimmered faintly among the small scratches carved by time. Elara ran her fingers gently over the rough surface. It felt like touching the skin of a living being that had weathered many storms, yet still carried warmth. The rhythmic sound of the waves against the hull blended with the whisper of wind through the ropes, forming an ancient melody, one that could only be heard when the heart was still. She followed the narrow passageway, the light filtering through the sail and casting her shadow long across the deck. The scent of salt, sunlight, and resin mingled into something deeply real, the fragrance of life itself. Each time the wind brushed past, her hair lifted softly, and for a moment, Elara felt herself becoming one with the sea, as though the ship carried not only her body but her very soul. She stopped before the wheelhouse, where the wooden door stood slightly ajar. Inside was a small, orderly space, a few old books, a faded map pinned to the wall, and a brass compass resting at the center of the table. Sunlight streamed through the round window, illuminating the blue and red lines winding across the map, routes that traced the paths of oceans, time, and human history. Elara stepped closer, tracing a finger along the map. She could barely read the names, islands fading into obscurity, forgotten seas no one spoke of anymore. She thought of those who once set sail with only a fragile faith that somewhere beyond the horizon, something greater awaited them. Perhaps, she mused, that longing has always lived within us, the urge to set out, if only to find ourselves. Then Ethan's calm, resonant voice rose within her, steady as the tide. The sea is a favorite symbol for the unconscious. It represents the mother of all that lives. The words of Carl Jung echoed through her mind like a call from a distant realm. Elara looked up through the round window, where light shimmered against the wooden ceiling. Yes, the sea was the unconscious, vast, deep, and filled with everything forgotten. Each wave was a thought, each current a repressed emotion, and the ship, it was the human psyche itself, carrying her through the hidden layers of being. Stepping back onto the deck, she saw the sunlight glint across the surface of the water, the small waves weaving together like threads of silver. Sitting on a wooden bench, she leaned against the railing and let the breeze caress her face. In that moment, she realized she no longer needed to control anything, no longer needed to steer, to plan, or to fight what was beyond her reach. She remembered the years in the city, dreamed every day a quiet battle, with time, with pressure, and with her own expectations. She had once believed that safety came only through control. Yet here, upon the vast sea, she saw the truth reversed. Peace comes only through surrender. Ethan's voice returned, soft as breath. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. The words washed over her like cool water sinking into her heart. Elara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her body began to move in harmony with the ship. No longer tense, no longer resisting. Each breath became a wave, each heartbeat a gust of wind. And in that slow drifting, she felt something profound. Healing does not come from changing oneself, but from allowing oneself to be. The light mellowed. On the surface of the sea, golden flecks danced around the boat. Elara opened her eyes and looked around, at the weathered deck, the frayed ropes, the faded planks. Everything bore the marks of storms, yet still stood strong, beautiful in its own way. She realized that people are the same, no matter the scars or the fractures. As long as warmth remains in the heart, we can drift through any tempest without being swallowed by it. She whispered to herself, a quiet confession at last. Perhaps I don't need to do anything to heal. I just need to stop and let everything return to where it belongs. Ethan's voice closed the moment like a breath of mist. The soul does not grow in noise, but in stillness. Elara smiled, her eyes glimmering beneath the soft light of the afternoon. Within the steady rhythm of the waves, she felt the ship moving, and herself moving with it. No longer heavy, no longer resisting. She was being lifted by the sea, embraced by the rhythm of the universe itself. For the first time in so long, Elara no longer wanted to go somewhere, because she knew the place she most needed to reach was the one she had already returned to. Part 6. The first sign, a message from the unconscious. At noon, sunlight stretched across the crystal-clear sea like glass. The Aegean soul glided gently through the deep blue waters, leaving behind silver trails that dissolved in the light. Elara stood by the railing, one hand resting on the warm wood, her eyes fixed on the shimmering reflection of the sky upon the water. There were no voices now, no sound of engines. Only one rhythm remained, the breath of the sea. As she watched the flickering lights dancing beneath the surface, a strange movement began to appear. Two large dark shapes slowly drifted closer, gradually revealing themselves in the dim turquoise glow. Two giant sea turtles, gliding side by side beside the ship. They moved with a quiet grace, unhurried and peaceful, as though performing an ancient dance the ocean had kept alive for thousands of years. Elara held her breath. She followed their movements, and for a moment time stopped. The water, the light, and the turtles seemed to merge into one, as if she were witnessing a secret ritual of nature itself. Then Ethan Gray's deep, calm voice rose in the stillness, echoing from somewhere deep within. In the language of symbols, the turtle represents the ancient wisdom of the soul, slow, enduring, and eternal. Elara felt a soft wave move through her body. The two turtles swam alongside the ship, not fast, not slow, as if they were guiding it. The sunlight glimmered upon their thick shells, making them glow faintly like stars beneath the water. She felt something stir deep within, as if the sea itself was sending her a sign. From Jung's perspective, this was a form of synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence. It was no accident that she saw them at this moment. The universe, in its silent and mysterious order, seemed to be speaking directly to her soul. Jung once wrote in Synchronicity, and a causal connecting principle. Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. Elara smiled. She did not need to explain it. She simply knew. She knew that these turtles were more than sea creatures. They were messengers of the unconscious, a gentle reminder that she was no longer alone on this journey. For days, Elara had carried within her a sense of separation, as though her soul had drifted out of rhythm with the world. But as she watched the turtles glide, steady, patient, eternal. She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She was being welcomed. She recalled something Ethan once said during a radio talk about Jung. When the unconscious wants to be heard, it does not shout. It sends symbols. And indeed, these turtles were the symbols. They did not speak, did not signal, yet their very presence stilled her heart. Elara leaned closer to the water, almost reaching out. The reflected light shimmered so vividly she could no longer tell where reality ended and dream began. In that suspended moment, she felt a pure connection between herself and the world, no longer a self-observing, no longer a mind analyzing, only life itself, ancient, slow, and infinite. Then Ethan's voice returned, soft and tender, as though carried on the wind. The soul speaks through symbols, and when you see them, do not analyze, just listen. The two turtles began to descend, their shapes fading into the deep blue, leaving behind gentle ripples that shimmered under the sun. Elara stood there for a long time, watching the place where they vanished. Warmth spread quietly through her chest, the warmth of being seen, understood, and touched by something greater. She exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight she had carried for far too long. The sea was calm, the ship drifted softly, and for the first time in many months, she no longer felt lost in the universe. Elara whispered to herself, "Perhaps it's not that we're searching for signs from the world, but that the world has been waiting for us to be still enough to see them." And amid the gentle sound of waves brushing the hull, she felt what others might call a miracle, not because it was rare, but because for the first time she had opened her heart to receive it. Part 7. Setting sail, leaving the shore, shedding the old skin. Dawn cast a pale light upon the water as the Aegean soul began to drift from the harbor. The sound of the anchor lifting whispered softly, followed by the breath of the wind filling the sails, like the first inhale of a soul awakening from a long sleep. Elara stood on the deck, watching the small seaside town fade behind her, the red rooftops, the distant echo of a ship's horn, and the silhouettes of people growing smaller, like memories being carried away by the wind. She said nothing. She simply stood there, letting the movement of the vessel merge with the beating of her heart. Deep down, she knew, from this moment on, she was not just leaving a place behind. She was leaving behind an older version of herself. Around her, the other passengers began to emerge onto the deck. Each was a world unto themselves. An elderly man jotting notes in a leather journal, a young woman snapping endless photos, an older couple holding hands, silent and at peace. Elara observed them quietly, and under the tender light of the morning, she realized something profound. Everyone here was either running from something or towards something. Then Ethan Gray's warm, resonant voice rose through the sound of the sea. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Jung's words moved through the air like a gust of wind, stirring something deep within her. Elara understood. The strangers around her were not merely fellow travelers. They were mirrors the universe had placed along her path, each reflecting a piece of herself she had long been afraid to see. Captain Nadir stepped out from the cabin, his bare feet steady against the wooden deck. He smiled at her. "Do you see?" he said. "When people leave the shore, they always feel a little lost. But it's only when the land disappears that they begin to truly listen to themselves." Elara nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the sky and sea became one. The water shimmered silver, clouds drifted slowly, and the breeze carried the scent of freedom. Something in the air made her feel as though her soul were shedding its skin, each heavy layer, each role she had worn for years, quietly falling away. Ethan's voice returned, gentle as the wind itself. "Sometimes, leaving is not about distance. It's about releasing the old patterns that no longer serve the soul." The ship picked up speed. The wind touched her hair, salty, warm, alive. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the sea's rhythm move through her lungs, her heart, as though the ocean itself were teaching her to live slower, deeper, truer. She thought of the faces from the city she had left behind. People rushing, conversations empty, eyes weary. There, everyone lived, as if being chased by something unseen. No one knew where they were going, only that they must not stop. But here, upon the sea, everything was the opposite. No one rushed, no one pretended. Every soul felt real, raw, imperfect, yet vividly alive. And in that truth, Elara felt a lightness she had long forgotten. In the sunlight, she caught the eyes of the man reading in the corner of the deck. He looked up and smiled. A simple, unforced smile. That single moment carried a strange recognition, as though they had met before, or perhaps their souls recognized each other long before any words could. Jung once wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Elara understood then. Perhaps these seemingly random encounters were not accidents at all, but movements of the unconscious guiding her path. The universe, in its quiet wisdom, always brings us the people we need to meet. Not to make us perfect, but to make us aware. As the ship sailed farther, the city vanished completely. Ahead, there was only sea and light. Elara stood still, her heart overflowing with an emotion beyond words, something between fear and rebirth. She realized that every voyage is a test of the soul. There is no map, no destination, only a fragile faith that somehow the path leads the right way, inward. Then Ethan spoke again, his voice a whisper meant for the listener's heart. Every person you meet is a mirror reflecting a part of your soul. Do not turn away when you see yourself. Elara opened her eyes. The wind still blew, the waves still whispered, and the sun had risen high above. Beneath the vastness of the sky, she smiled. A true, effortless smile, for she now understood. This journey was not about landscapes or distant harbors. It was about encounters with others and with the deepest parts of her own soul. She had left the shore, but more importantly, she had left behind her fear, and that was the true beginning of her voyage. Part 8. Life at Sea, Teaching the Body to Remember Peace. That afternoon, the ocean opened wide like a giant mirror. Sunlight scattered gold over the rippling waves, and the Aegean soul drifted softly through the tranquil expanse. No car horns, no voices, no notifications flashing on a screen. Only the wind brushing against the sails and the gentle sound of water caressing the hull. Elara sat on the deck, her back resting against the wooden rail, eyes half closed. For the first time in years, she didn't need to do anything. No effort to relax, no need to meditate, no pressure to focus on her breath. She simply breathed. And strangely, the moment she stopped trying to control it, her breath became natural, deep and steady. Then Ethan's calm, ocean-like voice echoed in her mind. Peace is not when nothing moves, but when the mind stops resisting the flow. Elara opened her eyes. Before her, the sea continued to move, yet it no longer felt restless. The waves did not compete. The wind did not rush. Everything followed its own rhythm, a soft, invisible order that only reveals itself when one stops hurrying long enough to listen. She watched the small waves collide and dissolve like thoughts and emotions that once troubled her, arriving and departing without her interference, without resistance. In the glimmering light upon the water, Elara felt something new. The silence within her no longer frightened her. Ethan's voice returned, blending with the sea. In stillness, the soul remembers its rhythm. She smiled. Yes, perhaps her body had forgotten how to be at peace. For so many years, it had only known how to run, from meeting to meeting, from worry to fear. It had forgotten how to breathe, how to soften, how to remember that it was never meant to fight life, but to move with it. Now, surrounded by the endless horizon, Elara began to relearn the simplest thing of all, to let her body remember peace. She lay down on the deck, feeling the warmth of the wood beneath her spine. Above, the sky stretched a deep blue. Below, the waves lapped softly against the hull. Everything seemed to melt into one rhythm. No goal to reach, no flaw to fix. Everything, including her, was exactly where it needed to be. Jung once wrote, "Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness." Elara thought of his words and smiled. Perhaps the peace she was seeking wasn't a flawless calm, untouched by storm, but the ability to stand amidst the waves without being swept away. She realized then, peace doesn't come from control, it comes from allowing. The wind swept gently through her hair, like a tender hand brushing away the past. The water shimmered with sunlight, thousands of tiny spirits dancing across the sea. Elara felt her heart open, as if the ocean itself were breathing with her. She remembered all those years when she had forced herself to be happy, to be calm, to be strong. But today she no longer needed to be anything. It was enough just to be, to let herself sink into each wave, each breath, each moment of silence. Ethan's voice spoke again, like gentle advice to both her and the listener. You do not need to calm the sea. You only need to stop fighting the waves. Elara laughed softly, a light, wind-like laugh, but real. She laughed at how much strength she had wasted all those years swimming against the current, instead of letting the current carry her. As afternoon faded, the sunlight turned amber, bathing the ship in gold. Most of the passengers had gone to rest, but Elara stayed, sitting quietly between the sky and the sea. She placed her hand on the deck, feeling the warmth seep into her palm, and in that stillness, she knew she had found something humanity constantly seeks, but rarely remembers: how to touch. Inner silence. The sea still moved, the wind still blew, but within her, everything had slowed. She was no longer happy in the old sense. She was peaceful, and for the first time in many years, Elara realized she no longer needed to struggle just to exist. Part 9. The awakening of ancient memory. Evening descended slowly over the southern coast of Turkey. The sun cast its final rays upon the towering cliffs, bathing everything in a golden hue, like liquid honey. The Aegean soul drifted into calm waters, and Captain Nadir pointed toward the gray mountains in the distance. His voice was low and deliberate, like a man reciting an old legend. That is the land of the Lycians, people who lived here thousands of years ago. Those tombs carved into the stone, they believed, were gateways where the soul would be carried away by wind and sea, never to vanish. Elara stood at the railing, gazing silently at the ancient rock tombs. From afar, they looked like small dark doors hidden within the mountain, some cracked open by time, others still intact, quietly watching over the water below. As the ship drew closer, she felt as though hundreds of unseen eyes were following her, eyes that no longer belonged to the living. The wind stirred. The sound of the sea striking the cliffs echoed back, like the sigh of time itself. Elara shivered, not from fear, but from an uncanny sense of recognition, as though she were standing inside humanity's own memory. Then Ethan's calm, resonant voice arose, steady as a pulse in her mind. In each of us, there's something older than our personal life, an ancient layer of the soul that remembers. The words merged with the moment, slowing her heartbeat. Elara looked at the tombs and wondered how many had stood here before her, looking at the same sky, hearing the same waves, only to fade into dust. And yet, their souls seemed to remain, in the rock, in the water, in the wind, as part of what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. Jung once wrote in Man and His Symbols, The collective unconscious contains the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution born anew in the brain structure of every individual. Elara closed her eyes. For a moment, something within her stirred awake. Not fear, but a deep awareness. The loneliness, the sorrow, the longing to belong. The emotions she had thought were hers alone. She now understood as something shared by all of humanity. They were the echoes of countless souls who had lived and loved before her. The wind brushed through her hair. Beneath the clear blue water, she glimpsed the faint outlines of sunken ruins. Stone walls, pillars, fragments of Greek inscriptions fading with time. As she peered deeper, her imagination came alive. She saw women carrying water, children laughing, a man chiseling stone by the shore. The vision lasted only a heartbeat, yet it moved her to tears. Ethan whispered, his voice merging with the breath of the ocean. The dead are not gone. They live within us, shaping our thoughts, our fears, and our dreams. Elara bowed her head. A tear fell, dissolving into the sea below. She could not tell if it belonged to the present moment, or to some ancient life her soul had just remembered. When she lifted her gaze, the sun was sinking into the horizon, spilling crimson light across the water. The tombs had turned to faint violet shadows, fading into the evening mist. And in that stillness, Elara understood. We are never truly alone. Every breath we take carries the breath of thousands who came before us. Every fear we hold is the inheritance of our ancestors. Every longing to return home is the calling of the collective unconscious, urging us to remember what the soul has always known. Jung once wrote, "We are not of today nor of yesterday. We are of an immense age." Elara looked toward the horizon, where the red of sunset met the blue of the sea, and smiled faintly. She realized her journey was not merely to find her own peace, but to continue an ancient current, a deeper stream, the great river of humankind itself. When Captain Nadir turned off the engine, the ship fell silent. Only the wind and waves remained, two voices harmonizing in the dusk. Elara closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and in that stillness, she heard what she had never heard before, the whisper of the past, echoing within her own heart. She understood then that every soul is finding its way home. And that night, beneath the silent gaze of the ancient tombs, Elara no longer felt lost, for she had found an invisible family, a lineage of memories of those who once loved, suffered, hoped, and who still lived on in every heartbeat of the sea. Part 10. Anchored in a silent bay, learning to sit with stillness. That evening, the sun sank slowly behind the moss-covered cliffs, its final light spilling across the sea like a thin ribbon of amber silk. The Aegean soul glided gently into a hidden bay, cradled between rocky slopes and old olive trees. The waves were calm as breath itself. Only the soft sound of water brushing against the hull remained, steady and tender, like the ancient heartbeat of the earth. Captain Nadir turned off the engine. The hum of the motor faded, and in that instant silence spread across the space, vast, palpable, sacred. The stillness was so complete that Elara could hear her own heartbeat, the whisper of wind through her hair, and the faint rustle of her clothes stirring in the salty air. Nadir turned toward her, his eyes kind yet serious. "People are often afraid of quiet," he said, "because they fear hearing themselves." Elara froze. The words were simple, but they pierced her mind like a needle of truth. It was true. She had lived for years inside a storm of noise. The chime of phones, the tapping of keyboards, the chatter of people, the endless hum of thoughts. They tangled around her like cobwebs. And whenever silence came, she grew uneasy, hollow, as if something deep inside was calling to be heard, but she was too afraid to face it. Now, surrounded by an ocean as still as glass, there was nowhere left to hide. No traffic, no screens, no work, only her and the wind and herself. She sat down on the wooden deck, letting her bare feet touch the water. The sea was cool and soft, like a gentle hand upon her skin. She looked down and saw her reflection shimmer upon the surface, fading and reappearing with each ripple. A part of her wanted to speak. A question, a confession, but the words caught in her throat. Then Ethan's voice rose within her, calm and distant like a wave from far away. You are not what you think. You are what remains when the thoughts grow quiet. Elara closed her eyes. The sentence echoed within her like a mantra. Gradually, her breathing deepened. With each inhale, she felt the wind entering her chest, salty, alive. With each exhale, she released a fragment of worry, a fragment of noise. Around her, the ship floated silently within the bay. No one spoke. No one moved. Time itself seemed to pause. Even the waves softened, forming gentle circles that spread outward from the moon's reflection. And in that silence, something miraculous began to unfold. Elara stopped being afraid. She realized that silence wasn't empty. It was full of the sea's breathing, the whisper of wind, the steady rhythm in her chest. It was life in its purest form, unadorned, unexplainable, unbroken. Ethan's voice returned, flowing like water through her mind. Silence is not the absence of life. It is life stripped of noise. Elara leaned down, cupped a handful of seawater, and let it slip through her fingers. The cool sensation reminded her that she was here, in this exact moment. No past, no future, no fear, no striving, only presence. The very thing she had lost while living to please everyone else. Jung once wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "The soul needs silence, for it is only in stillness that it can grow." Elara opened her eyes. The sky had turned to indigo, and the first stars shimmered upon the mirrored surface of the sea. Captain Nadir was fastening the ropes, his slow, steady movements carrying the serenity of a man in quiet communion with the universe. Elara inhaled deeply, lifting her gaze toward the heavens. Every sound within her, worry, doubt, regret, began to dissolve. What remained was silence, clear as water. And in that silence, she realized, peace does not come from the world outside. It has never been found in voices, in places, or in other people. It has always lived in the quiet chamber within, waiting to be heard. Ethan's voice came one final time, a whisper from the soul itself. You do not have to escape silence. It is not your enemy. Silence is embracing you. Elara smiled, a small, genuine smile. She stayed there for a long time, her feet still brushing the water, her eyes fixed upon the dark horizon. Inside her, everything was still, not because the world had changed, but because she had stopped running. Now, she no longer feared the silence. She understood it was not an empty void, but a sacred room where the soul returns to breathe. And on that quiet night, in the hidden bay beneath the olive trees, Elara found the first true peace of her life. Part 11. Merging with the ocean, the ritual of returning to the body. Dawn rose slowly over the sea, its first light spreading like silver silk across the water. The air was cool and still, so quiet that one could hear the soft touch of the waves caressing the hull. Everyone aboard the Aegean Soul was still asleep in their cabins, except for Elara. She stepped out onto the deck, her bare feet touching the wood, still damp with dew, and looked out toward the sea. Beneath her, the water was clear as glass, mirroring the sky that was gently turning rose. A sudden pull stirred within her, as if the ocean were calling her name. Without hesitation, she slipped off her light robe, revealing a simple swimsuit underneath. Then she walked to the ladder at the side of the boat, placed one foot into the water, and felt the coolness rise along her skin. As her body sank beneath the surface, the sea enveloped her, cool, alive, and pure. She exhaled deeply, releasing every sound, every worry, every remnant of a memory clinging to her heart. For the first time in years, Elara didn't need to try. She was completely supported by the water, floating effortlessly as the waves carried her gently. Ethan's voice arose softly within the stillness of dawn. When you let yourself be held by the water, you realize it never meant to drown you. It has always wanted to carry you. Elara closed her eyes. The morning wind brushed her face, and the light glided across her skin like a blessing. She felt herself dissolving into the sea, no longer separate from the water, no longer divided between body and breath. With every inhale, the ocean breathed with her. With every exhale, it sighed along. In that moment, she was no longer Elara, the woman who had once strained to survive, but simply a pulse of life itself. She remembered those nights she had cried alone in her city apartment, when loneliness and pressure tightened around her like a noose. Back then, she thought she was drowning, in work, in expectations, in the endless roles she was told to play. But now, embraced by the water, she understood. Drowning had never been the danger. The danger had been resisting the very current that was trying to save her. Ethan's voice whispered again, blending with the sound of the waves, like the teaching of a soul. To heal is not to control the elements, but to surrender to them. Elara opened her eyes. The sun was rising over the horizon, radiant yet gentle. Its golden light filtered through the water, wrapping her body in shimmering threads. Everything in that moment felt sacred, as if she were part of an ancient ritual forgotten by time. She spread her arms wide and surrendered completely. Every trace of tension melted away. Every voice in her mind fell silent. Each cell of her being felt cleansed, as if the separation between I and the world had disappeared. Only one thing remained: life itself, pure, primordial, formless. Jung once wrote, "The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate." Elara understood these words in a way she never had before. She saw how, for years, she had been running from herself, and how the universe had mirrored that flight through storms, losses, and departures. But now, as she stood still and listened, the sea was no longer her trial. It was her teacher. Beneath the vast blue sky, Elara laughed softly, a light, crystalline laugh that dissolved into the wind. She felt the salt water touch her lips, tasting both like tears and like promise. She knew then that this was not just a swim. It was a baptism of the soul. From somewhere above, a seabird cried out, and she realized that she was being born again, not into a new body, but into a new awareness of who she truly was. Ethan's warm voice concluded, "Rebirth does not come with thunder and light. It comes quietly, when you allow yourself to float." Elara drifted upon the water, the sunlight pouring gold around her. There was no audience, no ceremony, no witness. But she knew a part of her old self had dissolved, disappearing into the sea. And what remained, light, honest, and free, was rising slowly toward the surface, carried by the ocean itself toward the light. Now, she was no longer the one seeking peace. She had become peace itself. Part 12. The quiet moment of awakening. Dusk descended slowly, and the sea shimmered with hues of golden rose, like liquid glass. Gentle waves caught the dying light, and the whole horizon seemed to melt between day and night. Elara floated on the water, eyes half closed, body fully at rest. She let the sea hold her, let the wind caress her hair, and let the last rays of sunlight glide across her skin. There was nothing left to think, nothing left to do. She simply was, completely deeply in this moment. Every voice in her head, every memory, every plan, every fear dissolved into the luminous stillness of the evening. Ethan's voice rose like a distant breath. At the end of every journey, you realize you were never looking for the world outside. You were seeking the home within. Elara opened her eyes. Above her, the sky was shifting slowly, from amber to violet, from violet to deep indigo. Clouds drifted like ribbons of smoke, and between them, the first stars began to appear. Everything was silent. The sea, the wind, the sky, all seemed to whisper together in an ancient language humanity had long forgotten. She could feel the boundary between herself and the world fading away. There was no longer an I, the one who had tried, suffered, and sought to prove something. There was no longer a world. The thing she once believed was against her. There was only one vast living presence, expansive, compassionate, utterly at peace. Ethan spoke again, his voice echoing from some distant place within her soul. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Elara smiled faintly. The words of Jung, ones she had read hundreds of times, suddenly carried a new meaning. No longer an idea, no longer philosophy, but a living truth unfolding in her very breath. She had stopped seeking light in the world around her, because she had found it quietly within her own stillness. From the deck, Captain Nadir called out, his voice deep and warm. "Elara, come back aboard. It's getting dark." She swam slowly toward the boat. The water shimmered with her every movement, each ripple weaving a path of light back home. When her hand touched the wooden ladder, she paused and looked once more at the sea. The sun had disappeared, leaving only a thin band of gold along the horizon. A soft farewell from the day that had passed. Climbing back onto the deck, she let the wind dry her skin. Everything looked the same. The boat, the sky, the water. But she was not the same woman who had stood there the night before. Within her, the storm had gone still. Not because the world had changed, but because she had stopped fighting herself. Ethan's voice returned, filled with peace and gratitude. Peace is not when life becomes easy. It's when the heart no longer fights the waves. Elara lifted her gaze to the heavens. The stars now blanketed the night, bright, silent, eternal. She placed her hand gently over her heart, feeling its steady, living rhythm. She knew she had come home, not to a place, but to the deepest part of her soul. She sat by the edge of the boat, silent. The sea continued its ancient song, soft, infinite. Within her, a whisper rose, not from Ethan, not from Nadir, but from somewhere deep inside. I'm home. And as the Aegean soul drifted gently through the Mediterranean night, the moonlight spilled over the water, reflecting the image of a woman smiling, the quiet smile of one who has finally awakened from the long dream of life.